Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Exhibitionistas. This is Joana PR Neves. I am an independent curator and writer and the host of this podcast. For those who follow the podcast regularly, of course, you noticed that the last episode did not drop. And the reason is very simple. I was traveling for work for the most part of 3 weeks. If you needed any proof that this is a one-woman show, that's it. You have it. Sometimes these things happen, as it so happens to catch the flu, which is precisely why my voice sounds a bit different today. But I'm so excited to introduce this new episode to you, which, by the way, is also a new segment called Art Book Club. And I'm so proud of this segment. I'm very proud of this episode. It was not easy, I have to tell you, not to drop the episodes, because I am a perfectionist. I like everything to be impeccable. But also, this is an independent podcast, and if you needed any more incentives to finally click on that link and donate, I think this is it, isn't it? You know, this podcast cannot exist without you, and it can only thrive if you become a member. So there's many ways to do it. You can go on the show's notes, so that's the little blurb below the title of the episode. It's a sort of a description of the episode that you find on all platforms, all podcast platforms. And you have very different ways to contribute. You can subscribe to the Substack, which by the same token is a way for you to subscribe to the newsletter. So as you know, I'm a writer. I don't do newsletters. I find them a waste of time, a waste of space. So usually what I do with the newsletters is that they become a sort of a text. They're also filled with links, information about the episode. This is a segment that I decided to create while talking to my guest, Catherine Lee. The books that my guests bring to the segment were not written with contemporary art in mind. So that's the rule. That's the rule of the game. It has to be a book that is not about contemporary art. And we found out in conversation that one book for us, for both of us, was incredibly important for our idea, our notion of what curating is. If you don't know what curating is, basically it's conceptualizing, creating, organizing, promoting exhibitions. I think that the beauty of the fact that you can be influenced by a book or an author, a vision that speaks about something other than your job and bringing it into your own craft means that even if you're not a curator, you can always take something from these episodes. I'll tell you a little secret. I listen to a lot of podcasts about business, about stand-up comedy, acting, because having methodologies from other areas can be useful to your own. So for example, at a certain moment, believe it or not, I was really stuck when it came to public speaking. So I started listening a lot to stand-up comedians who talk about their craft. And it really inspired me to see how they develop an idea, how they verbalize it, how they lead you to the pun, how they deliver the pun. And it helped me quite a bit. So there's always information you can get that you can apply to your own area. And this guest, let me tell you, does not disappoint. She is such an original thinker. So I can tell you now that the book she chose to bring is Ursula K. Le Guin's very short text, The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. We find out that a very small shift in perspective can include a whole community of people. So, without further ado, I will leave you to the episode. As for myself, I am going back to bed, but I hope you enjoy this episode. as much as I did recording it. And don't forget, click on those links. Help me continue this amazing adventure that is Exhibitionistas. Let's do this. Welcome to the segment Art Book Club. This is a segment where my guests bring a book that has not been particularly written with contemporary art or even visual art in mind, but which somehow, either on a personal level or on a collective level, it has entered the contemporary art canon. It's my honor to welcome to Exhibitionistas for the first time the independent curator Caterine Lee. Caterine is a London-based curator. She's very interested in her curating activities and projects in site-specific events, also in participatory events or projects or exhibitions. She's also interested in digital archives and much more than that. So, Caterine, welcome to Exhibitionistas.
Thank you. Hi, Joanna.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me for this amazing project. One of the opening you hosted in your project space, we were talking about random topics, about how that it feels like to be a curator. And obviously our conversation, there's a gap between two of us, as you know, we haven't met before officially, and we have different experience. You are much more experienced in the industry. I'm a emerging curator who just, engaging in this industry for like 5 years or even less. So, and I was amazed by how quick we bonded with each other.
Yeah.
With really quick and simple questions.
But that's because you asked the question, didn't you? You asked the question that kind of let me a bit taken aback. Not taken aback, but it made me think. So do you want to say how? Yeah.
I guess because I always question about the role as a curator. Yeah. And we all know that curator came from the word cure.
Curare.
Right?
Curare
yes.
in Latin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I was asking you, if you can choose one word or 3 words to substitute the word curator, what would you choose?
Yeah.
Would you want to try it again?
Yes, sure. I don't remember what I told you because weirdly, I think I've had 2 conversations recently about that. And I remember, I don't know if it was with you, I remember saying for me, a curator is a space specialist, looking at a space, understanding a space, and with everything that it means. It can be the demographic of the people who goes into the space where the space is located, so the geography, all of it. Did I answer that at the time? I don't remember.
No, yes, you mentioned the space. You mentioned that, in reimagine the space is the most fascinating part for curation, because you said you would like thinking about the work, imagine, how the effects are going to look like once you put all the work, and you will put yourself into the shoes as a audience, and then you just just walk into the space over and over again to re-experience the whole space. Yes, I remember that very well. And then I think that's was the point I all of a sudden remembered the book Carrier Back, Theory of Fiction. And I said I want to be if I can find a word to substitute the word curator, I want to be a carrier back. And this morning I was thinking, is that something new? Is that like recently because I read this book, then I think about this concept. But actually, I had a similar thought like 5 years ago. I remember I was in the interview for the curating course for Royal College of Art. Yeah. And I didn't go because the tuition fee was too high. I went to Central St. Martin one instead. But I remember I was being asked to answer the question of how do you see a curator? I said, I see a curator as an empty box. An empty box that is capable for anything, no matter it's beautiful or not beautiful. And that is something I just all of a sudden remembered
You
this
remember
morning.
that, yes.
And then
So
this is
funny.
such an interesting coincidence, because when I read the career bag, I was, oh my God, the idea is so refreshing for me as a curator. I want to be a curator, a person who carrying a bag all the time. And I thought it's something really innovating and refreshing. And actually, I had the same thought 5 years ago without reading a single piece of writing like this. And I have very limited experience, like practical experience. I just finished my BA, and I haven't really stepped into the real industry. Like,
Yes, yeah.
so that was...
That's fascinating because this being an art book club, so about books,
So, yes.
I'm really interested in the fact that you read a book that in some ways resonated with an instinct that you had before.
Yeah.
And you found in this book something that you were actually thinking about on your own. And I think that's really fascinating because sometimes we have this idea of writers, thinkers, authors as these people who bring a sort of enlightenment to the masses who are learning from them. But actually, it's a collective effort. And I think Ursula K. Le Guin talks about that in the book, about this idea of community and about the fact that you are building something with someone else.
Yeah.
And that the fact that you thought about that and the fact that we are thinking in terms of empty spaces where we have to bring something in is really interesting in the sense that it is almost as if it's like a Platonic idea where ideas are somewhere and they're external from us and we just kind of convey them at a certain point and we also bring them into certain specific contexts. So to explain to our listeners how this conversation unfolded. So you were talking about curating, and I remember that when you mentioned the book, The Carrier-Back Theory of Fiction by Ursula K. Le Guin as being important for curating, I remember saying, what? You know, I was so surprised because it is a really important book for me as well. And that's why I wanted you to be the first guest of this segment, because I was fascinated by the fact that a book that has nothing to do with curation suddenly was bringing two curators together who both loved the book, probably for very different reasons. And one of them actually had the idea before and kind of met Ursula K. Le Guin halfway while already having thought about this empty space. So do you want to talk a little bit about this idea that you have of being really focused in place, so exhibitions that are either on public spaces or oriented towards a site specific or a site where they happen, the idea of participation. So what in your career have you organized that would correspond to these ideas?
Well, I think that this question links to many different theories, like the poetic of space. So in terms of the space-related practice, I did a lot of research towards participatory art, and my question was always about how a space is able to cultivate a community, and through participation, how a community or people entering the space could make changes to the space. And then this kind of everlasting interaction make both the space and the community growing. And this idea fascinates me, and that's really parallel with this one of the core idea in this book of Carrier-Back Theory of Fiction, which means, Le Guin was suggesting you have a bag, you put the thing that you found interested into this bag, and this bag is holding for all the voices, all the experience, all the relationships that all happening just within this tiny space. So she is not suggesting, you have to expand your practice into like massive space. But in a way, she is suggesting another way. You put everything in as small as as possible space to make them to see what's going to happen.
So wait. I'm going to stop you there.
Yes, sorry.
Because that's fascinating. And I know what you're going to talk about, which is a project of yours. But first of all, let's introduce the text properly.
Yes.
So, Ursula K. Le Guin, author. She's known as a science fiction writer. To be very specific, she was born on October 21st, 1929. She passed away recently, 7 years ago, on the 22nd of January of 2018. She's a Californian, born there, she lived there, and she developed her work there. She had a few stints in Europe. She was a Fulbright scholar, so she came to Paris to study, where she met her husband. Then she went back, and then she had another stint in Europe to study much later. But she's basically she was a California-based author, and she wrote poetry. She started as a poet. She wrote short stories. She's mainly known as a science fiction writer, but she also wrote absolutely mind-blowing essays. I think she's a marvelous essayist because she knows how to write about complicated things in simple terms. So do you want to introduce the book? So the book is called The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. Oh, we have the same one.
Yes.
Look at that. We have exactly this. And it says used up and dirty and folded, yours as much as mine.
Exactly. Thank you so much for allowing me to introduce this amazing text, because it's also a good opportunity for me to return to this text, as it's always so refreshing and inspiring every time when I go back, because it always reconnects me to my recent thought, to my surroundings, my recent encounters, and it's always give me a really refreshing idea of how I can, deal with those thoughts. And actually, I was thinking about this introduction. I found it so challenging because the whole text is so short and the idea is actually so simple and straightforward. But the depth of it, the constellation of thought it sparks, it actually make any kind of brief introduction reduced is what this text want to open up.
Yeah.
So I'll try.
I'm sure you can do it. I'm sure you can do it.
So in short, the Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction was written by Ursula K. Le Guin in 1986, and it was first published in Woman of Vision, Essays by Women Writing Science Fiction, edited by Dennis Dupont in 1988. So it is a very short, radical essay that reimagines both culture, human history, and storytelling, based on feminist anthropology, which we can expand on that later. She suggested that the first human tool was not a weapon, but a container, a bag for carrying and sharing. From this, she challenges the weapon-shaped or spear-shaped hero-centered story for battles and conquers, etc. She was proposing instead that fiction can be a carrier bag, a vessel for many voices, everyday experience, and collective survival. So today, this idea continues to influence feminist, ecological writing, and as well as for artists and curators, is also play a very important role to tell us what is another story, what is a more relational ways of storytelling.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. It is true that it has, Ursula K. Le Guin has had a sort of a revival or maybe discovery. I have to say, not being someone who has had an English education, so I arrived as a grown-up to the UK already. I came to Ursula K. Le Guin through Donna Haraway. So I was reading Donna Haraway, who has also become a name that has been kind of thrown around between curators and contemporary art thinkers and philosophers. And Donna Haraway is someone who is, she has a scientific background, but she now is a teacher of new ideas. I think the course she teaches has a very strange name, like a sort of new ideas and narratives in contemporary and epistemology, you know, something like this. And I remember reading Donna Haraway specifically about sustainability and about notions of ecology and how to shift your perspective in order to align yourself with the earth and the planet, the biosphere. And she kept referencing Ursula K. Le Guin. And one day I was in a bookshop and I saw this little book and I thought, oh, this is a great way to read the first story by science fiction author Ursula K. Le Guin. And little did I know, it was an essay. So I was really not expecting to read this. And it was a really important moment for me. I remember reading this and feeling elated by the text. And as you say so well, feeling a bit stupid because it's such a simple idea at the same time, like you say so well. Like, what if the most important objects, and I'm fascinated by prehistory, by the way. I read a lot about prehistory. And I'm not a specialist, obviously, but I try to read as much as I can. And I remember thinking, why did I never think about that? Because obviously, when you are a person, perhaps nomadic, building houses from natural materials that you have to build and build over again, then to try and find food, isn't it obvious that the first thing you need is something to carry the fruits that you have collected for you and for your friends?
That remembers me. So when I was a kid, I was fascinated by the novel called Robinson Crusoe.
Me too. Yes.
And I like that novel so much. I read it over and over again because it's so fascinating to see a human being from modern society and all of a sudden throw to an island and you have to rebuild everything from scratch. And I remember very clearly that we need to revisit that.
That's
novel,
the next art book club. I think that's your next episode with Exhibitionistas.
But I remember very vividly there was one chapter is talking about how Robinson is making the pot.
And it was right there, wasn't it?
And that was right there. And we never have this kind of really clear thought of which tool was most useful.
You haven't told us how you have come across the book. How did you find out about it? When did you read it? How did you feel about it? How did that happen? How did you encounter this book?
So it was very interesting and also surprising. So 2 years ago, actually, last year, I did an artistic exchange project in which I call out for all London artists to submit a artist lunchbox to me. And therefore, I could carry all the lunchbox to Vienna because I'm going to do a curatorial residency over there. So I'm going to stay in Vienna for 10 days. So I'm going to carry all the lunchbox to Vienna and meet another bunch of artists. And then another bunch of each artist from Vienna would receive one lunchbox that prepared by London artists. And then the Vienna artists could use the lunchbox that made by London artists to create a new work. And then one of the artists who was participating from London, when he was submitting his box to me, he said, "Oh, your projects, you should read this text by Ursula K because your project sounds really similar with what this book suggesting." And I was like, "Oh, tell me more." And then I got this book, and then I read it in Vienna, actually, during my residency. Found it fascinating because what I was suggesting for the artist to do with the lunchbox, because it's not actually asking people to prepare an actual lunch. Instead, I asked everyone to find a box, a lunchbox, for example, and look at your studio or your home or wherever your practice is based in, and put materials that is unwanted, wasted, or sabotaged in your studio into this very little box. The prompt was really, really, really
open.
I would say open. Yes. Even you give me a box of air, you say it's air from my studio, that's even fine, as long as you tell me it is air from your studio.
Right.
So it's like anything.
Right.
Object-based or non-object-based, saying this is all fine. It can't be valuable thing. It can't be. And for example, if you're a painter, you have a off-cut from your canvas, a draft or a sketch that you just throw away. And you don't want to really throw away because you still want to keep in your studio in case you need it one day. Things like that. But I also give a little bit a suggestion that I hope those materials or this whole box can reflect you and your practice. But it has to be not in unvaluable stuff like rubbish. It has to be rubbish. Things like that. And then I did that open call, and just in 10 days I received 25 boxes. It was so funny. And people just carry a little box and come to me. And then the artist who was so funny, the artist who was recommending me this book, he told me, "Oh, this practice is amazing because, you always treat your studio space as let's say, a sacred space for producing artworks. And those artworks have to be, go out of the, get out from the studio, go to the galleries, and be ready for the critiques from the public and curators. And then once you start looking of every corner of your studio, it's just so funny, and because you all finally realize the whole ecosystem that you build into this studio, and those little things that are grown up with you, they are rubbish, they are drafts, they are sketches, they are finished tubes or cut off woods or stretcher bars. You've been accumulating all this, but all to serve this central goal of the studio practice, which is producing artwork. But because you're so focusing on this artwork production, you almost forget all these little things that are around you. And he found this practice fascinating because once you put your attention to these little things, the whole studio is like a total different thing to you. It's like another world.
It's like what you said, it's an ecosystem.
It's an ecosystem.
Right? Everything participates, even the unwanted things, like you said, participate and have an active role in this ecosystem. That's what the artist meant, right?
Yes. And then once he starts to putting things, because he need to be selective to put things into that very box. And he realized, oh my God, some little thing that he never noticed actually contribute a huge part. Maybe like, for example, a biscuit box that he always ate, like a kind of biscuit he always ate during the studio practice. And then you have really refreshing thought on this biscuit because you have this intimate relationship with this very kind of biscuit. And then he put everything into that box, even a sock. I remembered very well about his. Imagine when I opened the box, I was like, oh my God. I was like, this box smell like another world. I mean, no. So imagine like all the things and also the small things he made, and like little object, he's also making sculptures using found objects. So this little object he found is really difficult to use, but he doesn't want to throw them away. So he kind of accumulated them in the corner of the studio. And he's found, oh my God, this is fascinating, because once you start putting everything in this box, you just feel like your whole journey of studio practice is condensed in this tiny box. And it feels like they are not trash anymore. They become the most valuable thing. It become a new piece of work. It's called Jacob Clayton, a London-based artist, and whose practice is about paintings, about found objects, and also things that are playful.
As soon as you talked about the books, I thought about Marcel Duchamp, because he really did think a lot about art, like we think about curating, with as much love as a sharp critical sense as well. And he also created what he called in French la boîte en valise, which means the box in suitcase, or the box as suitcase. And so he created a museum in a box with miniatures, of his own work. And I remember being also really struck by this and being really interested, because I think as curators, we always think about the museum with reverence, but also with a sort of a healthy distance also of the artificial setting that the museum can be as well. Would you agree with that?
How did you come?
How you agree only with the respect, not with the distance?
Oh, the distance. Yes, I do. I do agree with the distance. Yes,
I know
because the distance creates the aura.
Yes, it creates the aura, but also in some ways we kind of also know that exhibitions occur in many other kinds of spaces other than museums. So artist-run spaces, pop-up spaces, spaces that are not white cubes. It's very rare that actually you get to exhibit work in a white cube. But then you also start to kind of deliriously think, okay, so what if the world was a museum and everything was, and there's a film called Midnight Cowboy, I think, where at a certain time William Burroughs is walking in the street, so the writer, and with his cane, I think he has a cane, and he's pointing at things with his cane, and he's saying, this is a work of art, and he's just pointing at things that make up the urban space, basically. So as curators, we do end up in this kind of delirium of what a space can be and what an exhibition space can be. So I'm pretty sure that you have, I mean, the reason why you thought about the lunchboxes may be rooted in very practical reasons, but also very oniric or kind of delirious reasons. How did you come to the idea?
So it was very practical because they are portable.
Exactly. Which is what Duchamp said about his own museum in a box.
I saw his his project online as well. After I made this, because I was looking for reference to, find similar projects like that maybe resonate with me, but in different aspects. So because I was doing this curatorial residency, was supported by Austrian Culture Forum in London. And they was supporting me to do a research trip in Vienna for like 10 days. And my goal, they were asking me as a contracted independent curator, they will ask me to select like 5 artists from Vienna, like Vienna-based 5 artists, to collaborate with another 5 artists I selected from London to do a final exhibition. And the selection based on the theme that I came up at the time, which is making expansive. I was interested in how artists can use one single materials to make things expensive. It can be tangibly expensive, like huge. I did select one artist who make huge things. Or you can come up with tiny ideas, but you are so obsessed with this tiny idea, you just keep repeating. So some artists I selected also, their practice also involves repetition. So I had this very initial idea, but I found it's really limiting for me to just select 5 artists from both London and Vienna. And I want to expand this idea. And then I was thinking, okay, I'm going to stay in Vienna for more than 10 days. I can definitely do more things than just, like having conversation with artists or, visiting museum. I can definitely do something more interactive with local artists. And then I was thinking like how I can make the connection better between the London art scene and Vienna art scene. I need to start from people and then, but I need to find a really key portal for them to connect with each other. And it has to be practical because I don't have budget to support me bring a massive project back and forth. Or
that's what I wanted to get to, because I love the fact that in the book the first thing that is mentioned is food. As a sort of a really basic, we'll go into that, so I will explain that later, but one of the references made is the way people fed themselves in prehistory in the book, in Ursula K. Le Guin's text. And what I loved about that text is that it connects the most world-building, value-oriented theory through the most practical thing, which is how to keep alive, how to get food, and what kind of diet to have in order to have a good living and to raise kids and to just live as a community. And you raised this issue, and in curating, a lot of the times you have that terrifying situation where you have an idea for a project, but then you have the shipping costs, and then you have also the costs that come with building a scenography in the space. So there's a lot of costs that people don't think about when you're curating an exhibition. And when you're making decisions for an exhibition, particularly exhibitions that are these kind of programs of, oh, we're going to connect this city and that other city. And then as a curator, you're like, you have £2,000 of budget and you think this cannot work. I don't want to say that you had a very small budget. That's not what I'm saying. I'm exaggerating, it's hyperbole. But those are kind of the, people think of curators as dealing with big ideas, but we also deal with very, very, very practical things, which I think is why this book resonates so much with curating as well.
Yeah, you have to survive. And in order to survive, you have to come up with the most simple, but we think is innovative ideas. Yes, and another important thing is then another core point from this book is how to make things more collective, because you need to think about, you need to be able to create something, create a space that is capable to hold more things, more voices. To me, for this project, the same, and I hate this. I mean, of course I have this kind of power, I have to admit it, to be able to select the artists I like to collaborate with towards a exhibition in the end. But at the same time, I hate this idea because I would think, why should it be me holding this power of selecting those artists, and artists, they need to be selected in most of cases, and then why I should have this killing power, and I hate this. That's why I found participatory art is so fascinating, because you give people options, and these options are open to everyone. You can participate if you like. So this is like more mutual beneficial collaboration instead of me giving you opportunity. So that's why I want to create this kind of open call based participatory art, so people submit as they like and people can participate to interpret the lunchbox afterwards as they want. So, and that opens for more voices, and I don't have to do the selection. And I remembered when I was collecting the box, I was carrying my luggage. I was collecting, so some artists they submit to me in person, but some of them they said, "Oh, if it would be great if you can help, if you can collect the box," and I'm happy to do that. So I did a really quick travel around London between artist studios, and I was collecting with my luggage. And one of the artists said, "Oh my God, I like this open call because you are not selecting." It's like she was hugging me like, I like this way of, you organize an open call.
Another thing that Ursula K. Le Guin does is to challenge the notion of the hero.
Yeah.
So she kind of gives you a starting point to the book where you think she's headed towards an explanation of what's the structure of storytelling, what makes a good story. And so she starts by describing something really interesting, which is that contrary to what we believe, it was so the prehistoric and Neolithic diet was very much vegetable based, nut based, perhaps adding bugs and mollusks, as she says, and little rats, rabbits. So there wasn't much hunting. And so she says something that I find really, really interesting, which again comes to this notion of practicalities, which is that the average, so I'm quoting here, the average prehistoric person could make a nice living in about a 15-hour work week. End of quote. And so she's saying that because of foraging, basically, because there was a real knowledge of the environment, you knew where the rabbit would come if you really needed some protein. But basically, she's very focused on wild oats, because oats really are extremely nourishing and are the basis of the foods that was apparently, or at the time, I don't know how studies are at the moment, but at the time was a big part of the basis of food. And so she talks about these 15 hours of subsistence as leading to a really nice life where people who could sing would sing by the fire, those who could sew would sew, those who could be funny were making, a spectacle of themselves to make other people laugh, but remained the skillless people, the people who didn't have any particular talent, who maybe were getting a bit bored, and so therefore decided to go hunting big game, so hunting the mammoth. And I love how she shifts. And I remember reading this at the time and not quite, because she speaks in the first person. So she puts herself in the place of someone who was a prehistoric person.
Yeah.
And she says, so quote, "It is hard to tell a real gripping tale of how I wrested a wild oat seed from its husk, and then another, and then another, and then another, and then another, and then I scratched my gnat bites, and all said something funny, and we went to the creek, and got a drink, and watched newts for a while, and then I found another patch of oats," unquote. So she's talking in the first person, and she's saying, I can't fight, my story isn't as interesting as the story that the hunters are bringing into the community. So what they're bringing is not only an action, but they're also bringing a hero. So the story not only has action, it has a hero. It is powerful. And so as I was reading this, I was thinking, oh, so she's giving us the structure of, basically the basic thing that you study when you're studying literature in school, which is you need to have this, and then you need to have a crisis, and then someone solves the crisis, there's an opposition, then there's a victory, and then the story is over. And I was a bit disappointed until she flips the script which I should have seen coming, obviously, when she started talking about the skillless people who become hunters. And she changes the perspective completely by bringing up Virginia Woolf. It's a really, like you say, it's a very simple text, but she goes very far. So she brings Virginia Woolf up, and then she brings someone who I didn't know, who was Elizabeth Fisher, who was a writer and an editor who published a book called well, actually, she doesn't quote the whole title in the text. So the book is called
Woman's Creation, Sexual Evolution, and the Shaping of Society.
Exactly. And it was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in 1979 and I think published in 1977. So suddenly the story is completely flipped. The perspectives are completely different. And that's when I was hit like a ton of bricks by reading this thing. And it is a little bit, there's a parallel there with the notion of the curator as hero. Or did you...
Yeah, it's like what I just mentioned. Like, I don't want to have that kind of superpower of being able to save or kill certain people. Exactly. That's why I feel so resonated with. And also, if we look ahead, there is someone who is have more superpowers, more like a hero, and someone is beyond my league, and I can't even say him, or she, or they. And maybe I will be realized when I was killed. I mean, all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like, it's really parallel with this whole world. I mean, especially in art industry, there's always certain powerful or dominating voices that leading the trend or manipulating the market that we can't even say.
Yes. We can't name names. Well, the opinion maker, well, in the past we can. For example, when I studied curating, I remember that my teachers, who were basically male, I must say, had this reverence towards Harold Zeman, for example, who was presented as this genius. So suddenly there was a shift when I was younger and studied philosophy and then went into aesthetics and then decided to do a master's in curating studies. There was this shift between the artist as the hero. And then I was fed this story as, no, you are the hero. The curator is the hero. You're the one who is the opinion maker. Look at Harold Zeman. And I remember, because I come from literature, from my first love was writing, literature, fiction. And I remember when Attitudes Become Form, so the name of the big Documenta exhibition that Zeman curated, I believe in 1969. So I remember Live in Your Head, When Attitudes Become Form, this mega title, and being someone who's very, very taken by words, I remember thinking, oh my, this is such an incredible title. This is life-changing because it doesn't really describe or it's not contained by movements, names of movements. It kind of opens up the minds to whatever everyone was doing at the time. And you kind of are fascinated by this figure. And I was much more interested in the way he had come to that vision of things rather than how he worked, what was possible, why was that group of artists important at the time. But one must also say that Harold Zeman then curated another exhibition where artists invited friends. So there was this idea which kind of opened up the scope of the decisional power of the curator, but maybe it also emphasized what you were just describing, which is, as an opinion maker, a curator invites the people they know and organizes exhibitions with their friends.
And to me, I I always like keep questioning myself every time when I curate show, because I did curate a lot of group shows, and I'm not going to deny that I'm never like invite my close friend. Instead, I always invite people around me, like, because even they're not close, but because of my circle, because of maybe my culture background, also my experience shaped the very particular group of people around me, and I can only see them. I can also see people like apart from like those group of people, but the thing is, something might stop me from very inside. Maybe they are not really approachable to me, but the thing is, I would say I would definitely keep trying to approach the people that are not because I'm expanding this circle by inviting more people that I have no common friend with. I have no overlap with. So, and I found it's fascinating all the time, because every time I've been rejected by artists a few times. Even I bring artist fee to them. There's still always a reason for them to reject me, and multiple reasons. Maybe my curatorial approach or my curatorial premise doesn't really resonate with them. They found it a bit irrelevant. That's all fine, but I do have experience with artists who have no idea who the hell am I, who are very experienced in the industry, but they still like very open, very kind, and embracing the new ideas and embracing to collaborate with new people. And that gave me a lot of motivation. And that is also one of the central, I guess, the suggestion from this book as well, is you have to make yourself be capable of holding more things. Therefore, this container of your world or your friend circle can be able to create more exciting story. Yeah.
I'm interested in the ethical concern and priority of curating, not undermining the expertise that you have, because if you sit with another curator with exactly the same profile as you will have your expertise, they will have their expertise, which will probably not be the same. So Elizabeth Fisher is a really interesting character, because I thought she was an anthropologist, but actually she isn't. She was a writer who then produced this book, which is a feminist book, first and foremost, that draws on sociology, ethnology, and anthropology, and that says that the women were the first inventors of the hunter-gatherer phase, which is really interesting. And so she starts by saying, why are women considered as property that has been exchanged and sold? So that's one of the first questions of the book. And she associates our idea of nature with the idea of women. So nature is also something to be conquered and possessed as much as the female body. Ursula K. Le Guin directly quotes the book very quickly in the text. I'm interested here in the question of narratives that you raised, which is the main narrative and the underlying communitarian narratives that are being overlooked. So for me, when I read the text, the feminist perspective was really interesting, because, and I see the way you read it as it being really effective, because it's not only defending a female perspective of nature, of life, of anthropology, and of knowledge. It is saying, you called us female and you put us in that role, but actually this is all about community.
Yeah. When I doing the curatorial practice, and I never think, I mean, this is something, as you just said, you think I have more experience, but I if I have to count it, I don't think I have really long profile, but I treat every project like a child. And it's like something I need to protect with all my effort. And that's why I overthink even too much. I worried about, is the participant happy with the result? I need to ask them for the consent for sure. If I need to mention them in the future, I have to credit them properly, things like that. So I built a website to document all the lunchbox. So I may be a feminist curator, but I never realize it. That is a better way to phrase it. So I do things based on my instinct. So I do things because I feel it's right, because it's my inner soul is calling me to do this. Therefore, I guess because I'm a female, in the end, that explains how I do things in that way. So I would rather interpret in this way, because I never say, okay, I'm a feminist artist, so I'm feminist curator, so I do everything feministly. Okay, I will realize, oh my God, this is so beautiful. But I never do that with very particular intention. I follow my very instinct. So, and another thing I found this really also very feminist, but very natural to me is be able to gather things, to think about future, to think about longer future, to be able to gather resources and sustain the current, make this project sustainable. There's something really, really natural. And
it's interesting that you were talking about sustainability and
and availability as well, accessibility. It's something nowadays, like, I work in UL. We've been keep educate, like,
so the University of Arts of London.
Yeah, University of Arts London. As staff member, we always have this kind of session of, how to make your session, or how to make the project more accessible, more diverse, more sustainable. It's something that people keep yelling all the time nowadays. But the thing is, it's something so natural. That's why this book fascinates me. It's like we've been yelling those manifestos all the time, and we encourage everyone to be accessible, be sustainable. But prehistory people already been doing that without any single thoughts of what is sustainable.
Yeah.
So, and that is really refreshing for me. And then once you understand why people are doing this, you will be able to doing everything more naturally, more really follow your heart, more genuinely, instead of just to tick the box.
You were talking about prehistory, and you were talking about the way the Ursula K. Guin describes the way the Neolithic people live. So in a sort of a harmonious relationship with things.
Yep.
The exhibition space is a museum, is an art center. But you're seeing that maybe the exhibition space is something else, is somewhere else.
To answer this question, I also want to mention the very emotional point for me, and also why this book resonated with me, especially when Le Guin is talking about woman or a kind of man that is able to making a sack or carrying a bag to hold things, to gather things, to open up things for more people, for longer future. And that's resonated with me because this kind of care embedded in her text is really important to me throughout all my curatorial project. And I didn't even realize that. So that very moment was, when I was doing this artist lunchbox thing, I put all the lunchbox, was about 25 lunchboxes, into a luggage. So I didn't even prepare a lot of my my clothes because I need to save space. I need to save space.
I did wonder about that.
I wear 2 coats with me when I was landing the plan. But this is really ambitious to make the whole space accessible to everyone. This is very ambitious. But I would try my best, and I'm been learning and also improving. So, but this will be definitely a huge part of my learning journey as a curator.
You're not at the center of the operation. You're not the decision maker, and you are not the person who's the hero, right? We were talking about establishing a parallel between the curator and the hero. But I would argue that by setting up such an original frame of work and such an original setting of people sending you their lunchboxes, you going into the studio to collect a lunchbox that you gave a prompt for, and then carrying the lunchboxes to Vienna, and then creating this almost performative distribution of the lunchboxes and rearranging the workshop setting, I think you render yourself far more visible and far more remarkable than any person who would just have sent an email to an artist saying, I want to borrow that work of yours, please. They would have sent, yes, speak to my gallery, or speak to me if they don't have a gallery. Fill in the loan forms. The work is shipped. They're invited to the inauguration or not. And in some ways, the curator becomes really unremarkable because they're just a person who had an idea, contacted them, make perhaps an effort to send a text, explain the idea, do a Zoom call. But then the idea of curating is that the artist is at the forefront of the exhibition. It's not you, but here you are much more visible as someone who is, and you're making the carrier visible. And the second part of my argument would be, I think that the carrier is a really important object because if you think about it, and you were talking about Robinson Crusoe in the beginning of the episode, and the fact that a whole chapter is dedicated at creating a pot. It's not easy to make a container when you live in a prehistoric time. It means that you have to weave for hours and hours and hours and hours. You have to work on the material. You have to create fabric, for Christ's sakes, which is just unimaginable when you think about it, that you had to make fabric like with your bare hands, of course, with utensils and tools, and obviously lots of traditions that were passed on from generation to generation. But still, the container is a beautiful object in itself that requires so much skill. So in some ways, you kind of descended from your pedestal of the curator as the maximum authority. You placed yourself in a creative level alongside the artists in some ways, I feel.
Thank you. I mean, this is a very interesting comment on what I just, on this project, also on my way of being a curator. Something I found really relevant with, resonated with what the Queen said, because she very, very humbly said she didn't disagree with the hero-centered story. She just said she differs with all this kind of story. Or maybe she's not human at all. If a human means you need to kill, you need to use a weapon, then she's not human at all. And this is where she transits to being maybe a defective human.
Do you mind if I read the
Yes.
passage? Because you are quite right. It's such a beautiful... the society, the civilization they were talking about, these theoreticians, was evidently theirs. They owned it. They liked it. They were human, fully human, bashing, sticking, thrusting, killing. Wanting to be human too, I sought for evidence that I was. But if that's what it took to make a weapon and kill with it, then evidently I was either extremely defective as a human being or not human at all.
Yeah, I guess I just really like the way she disagree with this kind of a hunting story, but she didn't say I disagree. She says instead, she said, okay, if that means being a human, you are human, then I'm not human at all, because I'm not like this kind of people. and I don't like killing. So that's why I feel like when you were talking about my project, you said I did too much, like
I did not say you did too much. I
No,
said you did something very you were weaving, basically. You were
Yes.
weaving the container, which is you did a huge amount of work that put you in the place of inquiry, of questioning for the artists and for the other people involved in the project.
Yeah, but it's also, as you said, like the normal typical understanding of being a curator is like writing emails, approach artists, approach galleries, approach collectors. They all like really, let's say, intelligent work. You sit in front of your laptop, and then you organize your thought. You deliver the project in this way. But to me, I mean, I'm not denying. I also like being curated like this. Most of the work I done in front of my laptop, but to me, this project is so unique for me. Is I literally like you said, I waved the whole project with my own bare hands, and that's something I learned so much from this project because this kind of hands-on experience cannot be replaced by any kind of, laptop-based work. And again, I feel when I was on the plane and when I was carrying the luggage to another city, I feel like I kind of understanding curator more like caring and carrying. And that was really refreshing. And I want to be a curator like this because I felt a deep pleasure of doing that. And I know there was a lot of laborious work, carrying around, traveling around. But I'm not saying, but all this labor, all this work, they are part of this whole project. Making this project available for more people, making every participant comfortable with participating to this project, making the connection, making the whole atmosphere, the whole experience, something that they kind of never experienced before is something I really, really want to achieve, and that drives me to do that.
I think our conversation started by us saying that idea that you thought you had, actually, many people have had that idea before. You're just carrying that idea, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the way you carry it and is at least making a decision of carrying that and not something else. Mm-hmm. So you are the person bringing that change. Should that be celebrated as a heroic thing? I don't think so. No. It's just a thing. It's just it's just an exhibit. Even artists, I think, shouldn't be celebrated like that. Even Ursula K. Guin should not be. And she's the first one to say, this is not my idea. This is Elizabeth's idea. Mm-hmm. So no one should be put in the pedestal. No. That's what I think. Mm-hmm. Not artists, not writers, not curators, not podcasters, not older people, not younger people, but it is a thing. It is a reality that I have 20-year career. You have a 5-year career. I know Portuguese history. You know, I don't know what history you knew. And so we all have competences and we all bring something to the table and we all have value. And I think that it's important to know one's value. It's important to respect others. But before you respect others, you have to respect yourself as well. And I think this consciousness of your perspective is very important. And an empty box is not just an empty box.
Oh.
It is made in a certain material.
Yeah.
It was designed in a certain way. There's no neutrality.
And also the thing that you put into the box also matters a lot. Like
more.
More. So
more.
Yeah, so back to the lunchbox project. I mean, without those artists, those very open artists who were so excited with this kind of idea, and without their contribution, they are really, really generous. Some of the books they submitted was like so beautiful, like a treasure box.
I have a question for you, which is
Yeah.
the value of I'm intrigued by what you said, which I don't think I've ever thought about, which is this idea of carrying. I'm really interested in that idea of being a carrier of something as a curator. What does that mean in terms of action, and what do you see yourself carrying beyond the artwork, obviously?
I think this is very good question, and also been thinking about that a lot. Like, why would I like to describe myself as a carrier instead of...
Yeah,
I found it's more accurate than curator. Because curator feels like I'm a doctor. I'm doing some surgery.
absolutely. I
I'm
completely
doing
agree.
some surgery to the artwork, and they are not ill.
Or a wellness provider, because you're healing or something.
Yeah, you're healing
it's very
something,
strange.
but it's more like you kind of presume that artwork they are ill. It makes me feel like I'm a person who is walking on this journey of being a curator, and on this journey, I might encounter many things. I encountered you today. Tomorrow, I might encounter another person. Even I'm watching a TV program, I encounter some thought. So all these encounters are very important to me if I see myself as a curator.
I think that's a really
beautiful.
interesting point. It's a beautiful way of putting it, I have to say. And also, I think the interesting point is the personal aspect of it. Was it intentional, or do you really believe that it's a personal
preference?
Or that curating is bound to the person's experience?
I would say very much so. Although we would try to, I would try to make everything too personal. But the thing is, it's something you can't really avoid. It's something, because I'm a person in the end, I would definitely, but my choice, I would say my choice might be made even before me. So it might be made because of my culture, because all the education I received, because this whole environment is feeding me with some informations. Therefore, I made my choice, and this choice is made by the combination of my personal preference and the wider, broader culture context. So I embrace this fact that I might make some decision because this is my personal decision. But also, I think it's something more beyond is driving me to do that decision. Also, the description I just used might be a bit abstract, like a person carrying a bag on a journey, but I think this is the most accurate way to describe my feeling as being a curator, because you do encounter so many new things, and the most important thing is having this open mind and always aware that you are on the journey, that you are observing, you are absorbing things around you, the informations.
And you feel responsible for those
you feel
things
responsible because you, since you have finished this action of collecting things, it was like, okay, this idea is so fascinating, I need to put on my list, and I will think about that later. So
to end this really lovely conversation, where I learned so much and kind of shifted perspectives, which I think is what this book is about shifting perspectives in a way that seems so obvious and yet you haven't been looking at. So I feel that that's what you brought to me today. why don't we choose the bits in the final part of the text that you could read? So do you want to read your final paragraph towards the end?
Oh, yes, because this paragraph is mentioned something we haven't yet mentioned, but I think it's good enough to understand what Le Guin is trying to suggest. So this paragraph is saying, one relationship among elements in the novel may well be that of conflicts, but the reduction of narrative to conflicts is absurd. Conflicts, competition, stress, struggle, etc., within the narrative conceived as carrier bag or belly or box or house or medicine bundle may be seen as necessary elements of a whole which itself cannot be characterized either as conflicts or as harmony, since its purpose is neither resolution nor stasis, but continuing process.
Yeah. And what's funny is that my excerpt is the next paragraph.
That's good.
So this is really interesting because in some ways, do you think she's saying that she's not against conflict,
No.
but that conflict is just a small part?
Yes. It's she's trying to decentralize the idea of conflicts, because as you said at the very beginning, when you study literature, you were taught that the conflicts are main reason to drive the whole narrative. But for Le Guin, narrative is just part of the story, and it's same with all the other elements as a whole, and the final purpose for the whole story of the whole story to interpreting or incorporating the conflicts is just trying to make everything keep going. It's not the ultimate goal is not to highlight the result or the outcome of these conflicts.
And so in some ways you're having a really narrow perspective of what being alive is, rather than expanding, like you were saying in the beginning, like that your goal is expansion.
Yeah.
I highlighted so what comes next, which is, so she says, quote, "Finally, it's clear that the hero does not look well in this bag. He needs a stage or a pedestal or a pinnacle. You put him in a bag and he looks like a rabbit, like a potato. That is why I like novels. Instead of heroes, they have people in them."
Very beautiful.
She's incredible. What a small text. I think it's probably going to be the smallest text someone's going to bring to the art book club segment. And so well, thank you so much. This was so pleasurable and so enlightening, and such a pleasure also to revisit this text. So thank you so much, Catherine.
I mean, thank you. I mean, it was such a long conversation, but for me, it was really, I mean, I was able to keep energetic all the time because you were so, the conversation was so intriguing, and you will always be able to, mention something that I also never really think about before. And you let me to, because let me to reflect on my projects once again, to reflect on my career as curator, or my perception of being a curator once again. I mean, this is lovely. Thank you so much, Joanna.
Listen, I hope you come back. And to you, dear listeners, thank you so much for sticking around. This has been a huge pleasure. Catherine did say it was a very long conversation. So you will know that this will have been edited quite a bit. We did talk for more than 2 hours. So thanks again, and bye-bye. Exhibitionistas is an independent podcast created and hosted by me, Joana P. We have episodes every 2 weeks, and this season 3, is a bit of a turning point. We have 5 new episode types, from more experimental art travelogues or art stories to conversational formats about solo exhibitions with people who are not part of the industry, because we're all both actors and spectators of art and life. If you're new here, you have a whole catalogue of episodes to enjoy. Discover them at your own pace.